Brighton's finest.
Jeff Hemmins.
Jeff Hemmins.
This is
Juice 107.2.
Brighton's finest.
It's Jay Willgoose I'm talking to.
It is, yeah.
One of two members of Public Service Broadcasting.
3 now, actually. We're expanding.
Of course.
Yes.
You have a third member. Yes, I remember, because I saw you play in Brighton with that third member. I don't know, was that a year or two ago at the Corn Exchange?
Yeah.
So how does it feel being a three-piece rather than a duo?
It's nice, you know. It's there's kind of he's a very positive presence to have around. He's older, JF Abraham, and he's very useful on the arranging front as well. He did all the brass and horns and string arranging for this album. It's very a good presence to have about. Plus, he hung all the fairy lights up for the recording, which is a big part of it.
That's always extremely important, isn't it? Get the right atmosphere, get the right vibe.
It was remarkably important, actually. I've got to say,
is. We have fairy lights in our house. You know, it's essential.
Yeah.
Plus, he wears a pair of spectacles as well. That's part of the deal, isn't it?
It's part of the you have to have that on your CV, really.
Yeah. Excellent. So the third album is coming out July the 7th. And I'm quite familiar with your work, and I've been following it from the beginning. I even booked you guys back in the day to play at a festival called Meadowlands, which was just outside of Lewis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was one of the first festivals we ever did, actually.
Yeah, and I think you were kind of on the road to doing loads of festivals that year.
We did 33 that year.
Yeah. You remember the number? Excellent.
Yeah.
33 festivals. And
it was great. With correspondents were on after us, I think, and
that's
you had
right.
Nordic Giants on before.
Yeah, you got an incredible memory. Well done.
We got to use it while you still got it.
Well, most musicians can't remember one gig from the others.
Yeah, try talking to our drummer.
So as I was saying, I have been following your career quite closely. The first 2 albums, and then now this one, Every Valley, and it's to do with the history of the mining industry in Wales. More specifically, the rise and decline of the country's coal industry, which on the surface doesn't sound like the most promising idea for an album, but it's worked. It's working. And what can you tell us why you decided to focus on that? What led you to going down that avenue?
I think part of it was you say on the surface it doesn't sound the most promising. I think that was part of the attraction. It was kind of the challenge of it, really, and how do you kind of translate this into an accessible kind of alternative pop album, really. I think it's a fascinating story, but how do you go about putting that down in sort of musical form and focusing a whole album around it? But there's always a kind of quite a pragmatic side to what we do, and knowing that the BFI had an archive full of coal material and full of National Coal Board films, a lot of which hadn't really seen the light of day for a long time. That was a big part of it. And then the more I kind of wrote and researched, the more it kind of became apparent to me that it wasn't just about industry. It was actually mostly about community, and specifically community and how it reacts to the loss of an industry that defined it. And it seemed to me that if you framed it around one particular community, it would be a much more rewarding listen. And South Wales got the nod, probably because of the opportunity to work with male choirs, actually, because it's such a rich and emotional sound. Oh yeah,
I love Welsh male choirs. Absolutely adore them.
Incredible.
Yeah, so they feature prominently on the album.
They close it for us. Yeah, they sing without accompaniment to sort of see the album home. Yeah, and I asked them in the recording session in different sections to sing different notes across the scale, and kind of sampled it and built an instrument out of it as well that kind of weaves in and out of the other songs in a relatively subtle way, but it does mean that they're kind of part of the fabric of the album, almost. They're kind of stitching it together almost.
And it must have been quite something to be working with James Dean Bradfield as well. He sings on one of the songs, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, the Manics are such a massive band for me growing up and continue to be. And I remember when Sean was kind of in the NME, just in the little sidebar, and he mentioned that he'd heard the War Room and he kind of liked it. That was enough. Yeah. For me, I was kind of jumping around the room almost, and then we went on to support them a few times, and then I asked James to be on this album, and I still can't really quite believe that it happened. Yeah. I mean, when I look back, where I was 10 years ago, and if you told me then what I know now, I think I would, I just wouldn't have believed you ever. No chance.
Did he have anything to say from a personal point of view about the mining industry in Wales?
Well, we didn't discuss much of kind of his recollections of it. I heard a bit about that sort of secondhand through other people who know him and who kind of have spoken about their recollections of it. But he did turn me on to a few things. He turned me on to a Richard Burton quote that is on the album trailer that we made and is on the first track on the album, and I think it's the perfect way of framing the first half of the album. And I just from speaking to him and just from sort of talking to him, it was more discussions about the kind of the current political climate there, and the sort of the Labour vote there and where it's gone and all that kind of stuff. It was informative, and he's a very intelligent, sort of almost ferociously intelligent guy. You can feel that kind of that sort of burning intelligence that's kind of in him and that runs through the Manic's work, and it was just a privilege to work with him.
Juice 107.2.
Brighton's finest.
Obviously, for some people who don't know much about the mining industry, the story is quite incredible, but it's very sad as well, isn't it? Because it's pretty much decimated now in Wales. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Industrial decline. We're talking extreme industrial decline in this case, and there's still communities and parts of Wales which are still pretty much unchanged, aren't they? In terms of they're kind of like desert places. There's not much going on.
Well, I think
the house prices are next to nothing. The sense of community, the loss of community is quite profound in pockets.
Well, from speaking to people in the area, I think it's just difficult when the reason for these towns' growth was the growth of the industry, and these houses that went up to house the people who were working in these mines. And when you lose that industry at the heart of the prosperity of the town, and also at the heart of the community of the town, what does that do to the area? It was informative, kind of staying there and recording there for the time that we were there for making this album. I'm kind of wary of speaking on behalf of the people who are still living there, and kind of assuming that
sure,
the time that I spend there gives me some great insight into it. I think I do kind of have an appreciation of the problems facing the area, but yeah, it must be extremely difficult when even just standing on top of the hill in Ebbw Vale and looking down at the valley, and you're thinking to yourself, why is the main street in this town, why is it halfway up this hillside? You're looking down on the prime real estate down in the heart of the valley where it's flat, and you're like, why isn't it down there?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you'd build it, isn't it? And then it's something as simple as that, and looking at a picture, and then there's this enormous steelworks there. That was the engine of the whole town, and drove the prosperity, and it's gone, and it just feels like there's this void at the heart of that town, and there's new developments. There was EU funding that went into kind of putting a sports centre and a college and all this kind of other stuff down there, but when something defines the geography of a place to that extent and then goes, you can kind of feel it. You can feel it even just standing there looking at it. You can go, why is this place grown up the way it has, and what's changed? It's very, it's striking.
And you recorded it in Wales, in basically in situ, as it's called, in the former steelworks town of Ebbw Vale.
Yep.
What sort of space was it? Did you have to do a lot of work to get it into recording ready sort of space?
Yeah, in some respects, it was a big hall basically. I mean, it was kind of the size of Abbey Road 2, and it was an amazing, lovely high ceiling. It was the former Workers' Institute for the steel workers and for the miners who sort of supported the steelworks. Massive high ceiling, lovely wooden roof. I mean, it's extraordinary place to sort of spend the month, but it did need a bit of work in terms of being able to control the room sound and where you wanted a drier sound, being able to get that. And so we, did various things. Our drummer built kind of a drum tent that we could put the drums in and fit all the mics around, and that dried it all up a lot. And we could put the guitar amps in there and, bring as much or as little of the room into it as we wanted. Hanging fabrics that we bought down the road, from anything we could. And it's just, we kind of had to put a bit of a shift in ourselves, and it just felt like the right way to go about making an album like this, really.
Yeah. So you've got a big tour coming out. You're a big touring band. Touring and playing gigs is a big part of what you do, obviously, but it seems to be a bigger part than normal bands or an average band, let's say. You love to gig, you love to tour, you love to play live.
Well, you kind of feel needed then, you feel like you're doing a job rather than, there are some days when you can be sitting at home and you could be writing, but you just, you start feeling a bit guilty, like, God, I should be doing something proper. But if you've got an actual focus to your day or focus to your week, and you're actually visibly connecting with the people who are out there listening to your music, it's the best feeling you can have in music. And that's why you do all the other stuff. I think it's playing live. It's just such a great thing to do. I don't get how you could ever get bored of it.
No. Well, that's crucial. Delaware Pavilion is where you're going to be playing. That's the nearest venue to Brighton, Bexhill-on-Sea. Can you just tell me a little bit about the stage show? What can be expected? Is it pretty much the same, but obviously different visuals and everything, with visuals related to the album? Yeah, we've kind of. I don't think we could be quite as kind of tongue-in-cheek as we were with the stage set for the Race for Space. So, there's no kind of like we haven't built the equivalent of the LED Sputnik. We're not going to come out in miners' helmets, with little lights on the top or anything. I think we need to be a bit more mindful of the material that we're dealing with here. But our stage designer and visual artist, Mr. B, is he's working on miners' lamps that can be kind of suspended and kind of triggered in series and kind of played around with, and we've already got a couple of kind of motorised pit wheels that he's bought that you can light in interesting ways and play with. So yeah, that coupled with the visual side of things, and obviously just all the music going on in front of your eyes.
Finest.
Brighton's finest.
Jeff Hemmins.
Jeff Hemmins.
This is
Juice.